Hello and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. In today's video, what I'm going to do is show you the process of setting up a YubiKey. If you don't already know what YubiKeys are, they are awesome little tools that can be used as second-factor authentication that can help secure authentication on various devices. They support multiple different devices, but specific to us, this is a Linux channel after all, I'm going to show you the process of using it to protect your authentication on your laptop or desktop, as well as a remote server. The way it works, after you get it configured, is once prompted, you press the button and then it finishes the login process. It's very easy to set up and I will show you each step along the way to get it going. Now before I do, I want to mention real quick my sponsor Linode. Linode is a sponsor because I love their service and they are actually the platform that I use for all of my remote servers. It's very easy to set up a Linode, which is what they call servers on their platform, and your Linode can be anything from a web server, a WordPress instance, maybe you want to install Nextcloud, the sky's the limit. If you want to check out the platform, I have on the screen right now a URL that you can visit that'll give you $100, yes, $100 in credit towards your new Linode account. The link is also down below in the description if you want to give that a click. And I highly recommend that you do because Linode is awesome. Now, in addition to that, I want to mention real quick my new book, Mastering Ubuntu Server 3rd edition, which is due out in more than likely several weeks from now. It's going to be awesome. I put a lot of work into it. And you could pre-order this book right now at ubuntuserverbook.com. Definitely check that out. That'll really help me out. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and check out the process of setting up the YubiKey. So here I am on my laptop, and what I'm going to do is set up the YubiKey on this machine, and I'll take you through all of the steps. Now, full disclosure, quite a few of the commands that I am about to run actually come from the Yubico documentation for the YubiKey. I'll have a link to that page in the description below, but I'll also have a link in the description for the Wiki article for this video as well. Now, it probably goes without saying, but the first thing you want to make sure of is that you have all of the updates installed on your computer. After all, you know, those updates contain security patches, and the YubiKey can't really protect you much if your security hygiene isn't very good. You should always have all of the updated packages installed, especially if there's security vulnerabilities out in the wild. Now, I've already gone ahead and installed all of the updates on this machine. But in my case, what I did off camera was I ran sudo apt update and then sudo apt dist upgrade just like that. And as you can see here, there are no updates available. Now on my end, I'm running Pop! OS. That's my distribution of choice. It's actually built on top of Ubuntu. So that means if you are using Ubuntu itself, then these instructions should still work. Now the first thing that we'll do is install a required package. And the package is libpam-u2f, just like that. I'll press enter, and then enter again. It should be pretty quick. And there you go. Now the next thing we'll do is run the mkdir command to create a new directory. I will use the -p option. So under the .config folder in my home directory, I will create a directory called Yubico, just like that, with a capital Y. And the reason why I use the -p option is because that creates the parent directory if it doesn't already exist. If you are running Pop! OS like me or the desktop version of Ubuntu, then the .config folder almost certainly exists. But just in case you are running, you know, a server or something that's actually headless, then the -p option will ensure the .config folder exists as well. So now that's created. So the next thing I'll do is insert the YubiKey into my computer. And then I will run pam u2f cfg, the greater than symbol, then tilde, which represents the home directory if you didn't already know that. And then that directory that we've created in the previous step. And inside there, we'll create a file called u2f_keys. That's basically where the output of the pam u2f cfg command will go. And then enter. And now my YubiKey is actually flashing, so I could go ahead and touch the metal button. And now that's actually all there is to associating the YubiKey with my computer. But right now my computer is not going to require the YubiKey for anything, because what we have to do is configure each of the things that we want the YubiKey to control. So now what I'm going to do is show you guys how to require the YubiKey for the sudo command. So in a text editor with sudo, we will edit the /etc/pam.d/sudo file. And we're looking for this line right here, include common-auth. And we'll go to the end of that line, press enter. We'll type auth and tab, required, tab, pam_u2f.so. So we'll save the file with Control O and then enter, and then Control X to exit out. So what I'm going to do is remove the YubiKey. I'll open a new terminal. And then as a test, I will run sudo apt update. I'll press enter, and then my sudo password, I'll type that in. And then again, I'll try that just to make sure I didn't mistype anything there. And again, I do often mess it up the first time around, but I definitely didn't type the password wrong 3 times in a row. And actually, this is expected because I've removed the YubiKey. It's expecting to find a YubiKey on the laptop. So I'll go ahead and insert it. And let's try that exercise again. I'll type the password. And my YubiKey actually started flashing, and as soon as I touched it, the command continued. So it actually paused the sudo command and then waited for me to press the metal button on the YubiKey. It would have been great if it gave me some kind of prompt, maybe something that gives you a message similar to press the button on your YubiKey or whatever, but it works just fine. The YubiKey started to flash, so I guess I did have that visual indicator that I needed to press the button, and then once I did, the command continued. So next, what I'm going to do is show you the process of configuring the login manager to require the YubiKey as well. And by login manager, in this context, I'm referring to GDM. GDM is the default login manager for Ubuntu, Pop! OS, and many distributions that ship the GNOME desktop by default. GDM actually stands for the GNOME Display Manager. That is the actual program that is accepting your authentication when you first log into your computer. And that's what we're going to be modifying with this step. Now, due to the fact that my screen recorder doesn't work until after I log in, I won't be able to show you what the process of authenticating with the YubiKey on the login screen actually looks like, but I will show you the process of setting that up right now. So just like before, we will need to edit a file. So again, sudo nano or whatever your text editor happens to be. And for GDM, again, which is the default on Ubuntu and Pop! OS, the file is etc pam.d gdm-password. Now, if you're running something else like Ubuntu Mate, for example, that has the LightDM login manager, then the actual file that you will edit is LightDM. But again, Ubuntu and Pop! OS use GDM, so I'm going to edit the GDM password file as you see here. What we're going to do is look for the line that reads include common auth, and well, there it is. That was easy to find. What we're going to do is add a line directly underneath that. And similar to the previous step, I will type auth and then tab, required, tab, and then again pam_u2f.so, just like that. And then Control O and then enter to save, Control X, and that's all there is to it. Now again, my screen recorder will not activate at the login screen, but so long as you've typed everything properly, the next time you log into your computer, your YubiKey should be required. So one way that people might be able to bypass the YubiKey login is via TTY. and that's if they have physical access to your machine. Now, honestly, when it comes to physical access, if someone has physical access to your hardware, then security kind of goes out the window because, they can get a hammer and bash your computer and destroy it for all we know. But it is a good idea to lock down TTY login because that is legitimately something that someone could try to do, is access a TTY and then try to brute force your password. So by requiring the YubiKey for that as well, that's just one more layer of security, and it's easy to implement, so we may as well go ahead and do that. So we need to edit a file, and the file we need to edit is /etc pam.d, and then login. I'll press enter. So we will look for the line that has common auth, and here it is. And just below that, auth tab required tab pam_u2f.so. As you can see, a very similar process to what we've already done. So basically I'll save the file, and that should be all there is to it. Now my screen recorder will not be active on a TTY login, so for that reason I'm not going to be able to show you what that looks like. But if it's working properly for you, you should be able to do Control-Alt and then one of the F keys to get to a TTY. You could go ahead and try your login, and you should be asked to authenticate via the YubiKey. You should see it flash, and then once it does, you should be able to press it, and then you'll be logged in. And then to get back into your desktop session is typically Control-Alt-F1 or Control-Alt-F2, and I've seen it as Control-Alt-F7 sometimes as well. So you could just press one of those key combinations to get back to your graphical desktop. So on my end, off camera, I went ahead and created a new server on Linode to serve as the example for this section of the video. Now, nothing I'm going to show you right now is actually specific to Linode. You should be able to go through the same process on whatever your server provider happens to be, or even a physical machine if you want to secure SSH to a physical server. But on my end, I just decided to go with Linode because, I have the account, it's easy, and I wanted to get a server set up quickly. And now that I do have it set up, I could copy the IP address here. I could go back down here to my terminal, and I should be able to SSH into that server. As you just saw, it logged me right in. It didn't even ask me for a password. And that's because I actually set up SSH keys on my local laptop, and then I copied that key over to the server, and then I disabled password authentication. And for that, I went through the same procedure that I've mentioned several times on several of my videos, because disabling password authentication is a very important thing to do to secure SSH. And with that out of the way, we could go ahead and set up the YubiKey to facilitate access to our remote server. So on this Ubuntu 2004 instance, I'll need to add a special repository to be able to install the required software. So for that, I will run sudo add-apt-repository, and then it's ppa:/Yubico/stable. And then I'll type in the password for my user. And it's basically giving me a confirmation. I'll just press enter to confirm that I do want to add that repository. And notice right here, it's actually updating my package index automatically. And if it doesn't do that on your end, you can just run sudo apt-update. And once that's done, we can install a package by the name of libpam-yubico. And enter again. And now we have the required package installed on our remote server. So to continue, we will need to edit a special file. It doesn't actually exist yet. So since the file that we need to edit, actually in our case create, is going to be outside of our home directory, we will need sudo. We could use whatever our text editor of choice happens to be, and the file is going to be in the etc ssh directory, and we'll call the file authorized_YubiKeys. Now in your case, you might be the only user that'll ever access the server, or maybe you actually work in an organization where you have a team of administrators that each need to access the server. What we're going to do is create a line of configuration for each user that we want to be able to access the server. Now, I'm the only user on this server, so I'll just type J for my username because that's what it is, and then a colon, and then I'll touch the YubiKey in a text editor and grab the first 12 characters and only the first 12 characters, and I'll put those first 12 characters in this file. And then on your end, you'll basically do the exact same thing. Again, type your username, colon, and then the first 12 characters when you press the YubiKeys button. If you have other users that want to also access this server, then you could basically put their usernames here as well, followed by whatever their key happens to be. But again, in my case, I'm the only user of this server, so for me, I'm just going to have this one line right here. So what I'm going to do is save this file and then close out, but we're not done yet. The next file that we're going to need to edit is etc pam.d sshd. I'll press enter, and unlike the first file, this one does already exist. Now what I'm going to do is add a new line of configuration. I'm going to make sure that it's the first thing in this file. And what I'm going to do is type out the actual line of configuration, but there's going to be a few elements that we will need to replace. So we will start it off with auth and then required ham_yubico.so id equals, and we will replace this value later. We don't want to actually save this file until after we do replace this value. And then key equals, and this is another item that we will need to replace. And then we will type auth file, and then set that equal to /etc/ssh, and that's going to be the path to the file that we've edited in the previous step. Now before we go any further, we will need to actually create an API key to use with this service, and to do that, we will actually do that through the web browser. So again, don't save the file. We have it open. We don't want to save it just yet. But next we'll open up a web browser, which I already have right here. And in a new tab, what I'm going to do is go to the following URL, upgrade.yubico.com/get API key, and then enter. And what I'm going to do is actually enter my email address in the first field right here. And then down here, I'm going to actually touch the YubiKey button. I'll check this box, and then I'll click Get API Key. And now I actually have the values here that I need to put into the other file that I have open in my terminal window. So I will grab the client ID. What I'm going to do is paste that right here. And back in the browser, I'm going to grab the secret key. And I'm going to do the same thing and paste it right here. So as you can see, I have the line auth required pam_yubico.so ID equals, and that ID came from the API key that I've generated, same with the key. And then the auth file, which is set to be equal to the file that we've edited in the previous step. So I will save the file now. I should have everything that I need. And then I will exit out. So next, what we're going to do is edit yet another file, and we'll edit etc ssh sshd_config. We're going to look for a line that begins with challenge. And it's this one right here, challenge response authentication. It defaults to no. We need to set that to yes. Next, we're going to look for another line. That's going to be use PAM, capital U, capital P, which is this one right here. It's already set to yes. So we're going to leave that as yes because that's what it should be. And now I'll save the file and exit out. But what I'll do is restart the SSH service So at this point, we can go ahead and test the YubiKey. Now I've restarted SSH, but I'm still connected. And the reason why is because when you restart the SSH service, it doesn't actually disconnect you from any sessions that you currently have open, but any changes that you make to the SSH configuration will take effect for any new connections. But we want to keep this session open in case we run into any problems, and then test SSH in another window. I'll just open up a new tab. And what I'm going to do is SSH, and then I'll type in my username just like before, then the IP address. Now in my case, the YubiKey is not actually going to be used if I SSH into the server. As you see here, it just logged me right in. I didn't actually press anything on the YubiKey, I promise. And the reason why that's the case is because I'm using SSH keys. I already had SSH keys set up on this server before. If you recall, I mentioned earlier in the video that I set up SSH key authentication. What I'm actually going to do is use nano, and then I'll use it against .ssh, and then there's an authorized keys file here. And this is the file that actually contains the SSH keys that are allowed to connect. What I'm going to do is just put a hash symbol here in front to comment that out, and then I'll save the file, and then I will disconnect. Now, I still have my original SSH session open, so what I'll do is just try to start another one. I'll just press the up arrow here and try to SSH directly into the server. I'll press enter, and now you can see that the prompt has changed. So I will press the button on my YubiKey, and then I will enter the password for my user, and now I'm logged into the server. As you can see, the YubiKey has been successfully set up for two-factor authentication on the remote server, and now in order to connect to the server, I need to first use the YubiKey and then also type in the password for my user account. But as you can see, mission successful, everything is good to go. So there you go. That was the process for setting up a YubiKey to protect authentication on your Linux installation, whether that be a workstation like a laptop or desktop, or even a remote server. I hope that was helpful. If you did find it helpful, please click that like button, because that lets YouTube know that you want to see more Linux content just like this. And you can share this video with all of your friends, or maybe even on your favorite social media network. That would be pretty cool as well. Let me know what you thought of this video, or what your opinions are of the YubiKey itself, in the comments down below. I look forward to reading what you guys have to say. And make sure you subscribe, because I have some awesome content coming very soon. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again real soon.